Good evening, everyone. Happy Onam to all. Although Onam is going to be ended, but anyway, today we are going to discuss a very important topic. Its importance lies not in the content, but its importance lies in the scope, because we have decided to pick a very significant yet a topic which has very less scope, in the sense that in order to address this issue and to make a material for you, we had to do a lot of research as well as apply our own understanding and knowledge. You will understand what I am trying to explain on the course of this lecture. It is very necessary to understand in the beginning of this lecture that what exactly is the focus. The theme or the topic is the parliamentary privileges and suspension of legislators. These two things are interlinked. I want to make it very much clear that we are not going to discuss parliamentary privileges per se. As you know, Parliament, for that matter, state legislatures, they have some privileges. Privileges are rights, immunities, exemptions given to the legislators to carry out their functions and role. As far as Parliament is concerned, Article 105 deals with parliamentary privileges, but parliamentary privileges and privileges of state legislatures in India are uncodified, which means the privileges are not written down in a document or a series of documents. Parliamentary privileges are rights, immunities, exemptions given to the legislators and legislature as an institution and to the committees of the legislature. I am using the word legislature, which means the state assembly, council and the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. I am using the word legislature to indicate both. Generally, parliamentary privileges or legislative privileges is given to the legislature, the members and committees, so that they can carry out their function without fear or favor. But when you see the application of privilege, you will find that there is a term called breach of privilege. When the privileges breached, please come. When the privileges are breached, breach means broken, violated, undermined, then there are some procedures. Privileges can be breached by two types of entities. Privileges of Parliament can be breached by two types of entities, or two types of people, or two types of institutions. I am using the word breach of privilege. This breach can be done by two types of individuals, two types of group of people. I am using the word members and non-members. When I am using the word members, it means legislators, MLAs and MP. When I am using the word non-members, which means those who are not MLA or MP. Our scope of discussion, our point of discussion will be on this members. We will not be discussing this. Right? So keep that in mind. In the concluded monsoon session of the Parliament, what happened was, some MPs, both from Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, were suspended. Why they were suspended? Because according to the chairman or according to the House, these people violated the privileges of the House. Some MPs were suspended because they violated the privileges of the House. One MP from Lok Sabha, another from Rajya Sabha, another from Rajya Sabha. Number is not important, but some MPs were suspended. Why they are suspended? Because they breached the privileges of the respective house. Generally, this breach of privileges cases, if against individual outside the house, let's say I am a journalist, I have written something against the Lok Sabha. I felt that the speaker is not impartial. I felt that the parliamentarians are not functioning. They are illiterate. All these things if I write, if I say, then it might be that the privileges might be violated. Parliamentarian might feel that their privileges are violated, right? So I can be called into that house and they can punish me, warn me, admonish me, reprimand me or punish me. But we are not dealing with that. We are dealing with this issue when breach of privilege allegations are against the members themselves, and because of that they are suspended. We are trying to link these two, breach of privileges and suspension of legislators. So privileges are rights, immunity, exemptions given to the parliamentarians, the committees, so that they can function properly. For instance, one of the privilege is freedom of speech and expression in the house. Without freedom of speech and expression, they may not be able to raise the voice, concerns, interests, aspirations of the constituency. The function of parliament is to hold the executive accountable. So they need to ask questions, debate, discussion, etc. need to happen. And whatever they say, do in the parliament in terms of vote, etc. should be immune from judicial scrutiny, in the sense that if it is there, then it will be creating a lot of checks and fear in the minds of the parliamentarians. What if I do something, if I say something, what will happen? This way. But here what is happening is, breach of privilege is used against members, leading to their suspension. Right? We are not looking into the other aspect of privileges. There have been a number of cases where journalists and various others, even officials, were called into the house, whether it is the assembly or the let's say this parliament, and they have been warned, admonished, etc. because they breach the privileges of the house. But here what is happening, that the allegation is the members are violating the privileges of house. Because of that, parliament functioning, functioning of the house is impacted. So they are being suspended. This link is we are going to discuss here. Keep one thing in mind, in India, parliamentary privileges, for that matter, privileges of legislature is uncodified. Uncodified means it is not exhaustively written down. Written constitution, unwritten constitution. In unwritten constitution, although there are multiple documents, conventions play a very important role, which are not codified, written down. Similarly, in parliamentary privileges in India, some privileges are written down. Like if you see Article 105, it will say freedom of speech and expression, right, etc. Some are written down. But keep this in mind, parliamentary privileges, for that matter, legislature privileges, are not exhaustively codified in India. The constitutional provisions, rules of the house and conventions, etc. determine the code of the privileges. Now, members of the house can be suspended. The rules of the house provide that members can be suspended or even expelled for some actions they have done, which have happened earlier also. Suspension is a thing which happens because, let's say, there are some rules in the parliament. If the members are not adhering to it, creating obstruction, which makes the house impossible to function. Let's say, moving into the well of the house and shouting slogans and throwing something into the chair. So there are multiple actions which may be reason for suspension of members. In general, suspension can be based upon two factors. One, violation of rules of the house. Second, violation of privilege. We are not dealing with the suspension of rules of the house. Also, although there are some rules dealing with privilege, but the problem with privilege is this is uncodified, which means a grey area. The chair will decide, the committee will decide, or the house as a whole will decide. Right? That is the reason we are saying if suspension happened in other areas, there are some rules, and rules this say that you should not do this, and if you do, then you can be suspended. Everything is given, but here it is uncodified, very grey area, and this is used to suspend members. This is what we are going to discuss. That's what I have told you in the beginning. We have tried to narrow down the scope of this entire lecture. Parliamentary privilege is a very big topic. Suspension is a very big thing. A lot of things are happening, but we are going to pinpoint this particular aspect. Breach of privileges leading to the suspension of members. How it is being done, what is the mechanism for it, what are the implications, how it should be addressed. This is what we are going to see, because the fundamental issue is this breach of privilege is given in general to protect the integrity, authority, dignity, status of the house, so that it can function properly. It can reflect, represent the interests of the people and frame policies and laws. But here it is used in a different way. Breach of privilege is given for protection of democracy, democratic way of functioning, to improve accountability and having more transparency. But here it is being used to suspend members, right? And suspension will have a lot of implications that we will see. So as I mentioned, members have been suspended because of breach of privilege. Now the issue is, scholars have said, many constitutional scholars, writers and even opposition leaders have said that this is misuse of privilege, misuse of privileges. Because if you want to suspend somebody, then there are rules. According to the rule, you suspend, if at all it has to be done. But the manner of invoking breach of privilege and suspending the members seem that there is vindictiveness. Because suspension in the sense that the chair and the ruling party is majority in the Lok Sabha, right? And they have a majority, although not in that manner, but still the government controls the Rajya Sabha also. So this majority can be used in order to suspend. Why? The chair, the vice president, the deputy chairman in the Rajya Sabha and the speaker in the Lok Sabha, these are all from the ruling party. So in order to invoke the breach of privileges, there are multiple, let's say, methods, ways which we have provided in the booklet too. The chair can say that this person has breached the privilege, and he or she can refer the matter to a committee, a privilege committee. The committee will investigate, inquire, etc., etc. After that, it will give its finding, and the finding will be discussed within the house, right? So house will decide suspension karna hai ya expel karna hai, all those things, or there is no merit in it. It has happened. This is the way it should progress. But here what happened? Here what happened was suspension came earlier, then the matter was referred to privilege committee. I am the chair, I mean the presiding officer, right? You are disturbing and you are creating a lot of issues. So I said, I am suspending you from the house, and and then the matter is referred to the committee. Or it is also possible that a motion is moved by a member. Let's say you are from the government, right? And you stood up saying that this MP has violated the privileges of the house by her conduct, right? So what happens? Other members, because of the majority, they will support it. The chair might put the motion to vote. It definitely will be accepted because they have the majority. Then the ruling will go. We are not saying that the chair or the house does not have any power to suspend immediately. They can, but it has to be done within the rules, not under this. The point is that under this there are a lot of grey areas, so it can be misused, like it happened. It is said right? There is a committee, it's a procedure. If you want, you cannot suspend somebody before and then refer it. It can happen in the context of like government officers and others, suspension for fair investigation. But as far as the House is concerned, this way does not happen. Not only that, second problem is that the duration of suspension. Duration. For how many days individual should be suspended? How many days? 1 day, 2 days, 3 days? The entire duration of the session? The rules says that suspension should not be more than the duration of the session, monsoon session. Let's say beginning of the monsoon session, suspended. Suspension will end, has to end with when the session ends. It cannot be beyond that. Why? Ultimately, you are suspending somebody because you felt that, you feel that, or you believe that the individual is obstructing the functioning. Right? So you are removing that individual from that area so that it will function properly. Now you removed, session ended, then there is no reason for suspension. It should end within the session, because the purpose of suspension of an MP is to enable the parliament to function properly, and functioning will end within the session. Then that is why the rules say it maximum of this, and the Supreme Court has said that. I will explain that later. So major problem is lack of codification of privileges and using these privileges allegedly to target opposition members. In fact, the leader of the opposition, so called, in the Lok Sabha has been suspended. Although there is no leader of opposition in the Lok Sabha, leader of opposition of the largest party, the person is akin to, similar to a cabinet minister rank. Leader of opposition has a very important role. The person is also the chair of the Public Accounts Committee. Now you have removed the tallest person from that house, right? It's not he is not an ordinary MP. So it shows something. So the targeting, this is what they are saying, that the use of the privilege to target opposition members, and the duration. Why? Because the suspension in general with respect to some MPs have been extended beyond the session. So beyond the session is quite amazing. As per the rule, you cannot do that. But it is privilege anyway, right? But the point is that this is not acceptable in the sense that the purpose of suspension, whether in privilege or other rules, should be to maintain the decorum, efficiency, functioning of the house. Once the session is done, then there is no reason that you should extend it. Expulsion is a different thing. Suspension, expulsion. Expel means the person will not become a member. There will be a vacancy. Election will happen. Suspension, no vacancy, but he cannot enter the precincts of the house, cannot participate, no question, etc. So we are saying that the breach of privilege of idea, the issue of breach of privilege and its usage to suspend members without following the actual procedures or without having any fairness may not be appropriate, especially in the context of Indian democracy. Why is it so? You will understand the implications of this. What will happen if these privileges are being used in this manner and MPs and MLAs have been suspended? Majoritarianism is the issue. Number one, theoretically, every opposition member can be suspended, isn't it? If the government wants to pass a bill, let's say it does not have the majority in the house, I mean this Rajya Sabha, but the chair is from the ruling party, right? It is possible that it can suspend, but the suspension can also be possible in the rule. But this is a very easy method. So it can be misused to reduce the majority requirement of majority and get bill passed. Possibility is there theoretically. Another issue with this suspension is this. If members are suspended and they do not know why they are suspended, because breach of privilege, a grey area, your conduct has created a breach of privilege to the house. So we are moving a motion, right? You are suspended. In the committee will inquire. There is a timeline, I think, for 1 month or something like that. Maybe, whatever that might be. So you do not know for what purpose you are being suspended. Simply a vague notion is given. Gross misconduct, all those things. This creates fear in the mind of individual MPs. MPs, legislators have freedom of speech and expression in the house. Now this freedom, when they are expressing freely without fear, this expression may be termed as a breach of privilege of the house. One incident was a member was asking repeated questions on a particular issue, Adani earlier, now in the context of I think Manipur or something like that. So it is the duty of the member to ask questions, right? But the point is that the chair is saying you cannot ask the repeated question because we have disallowed it once. I am not going to the correctness of it. I am simply saying that this use of privilege as a method to suspend members will undermine the privilege itself, in the sense that they will not be able to raise concerns, aspirations of the constituency with freedom. This undermines the constitutional privilege under Article 105, because they might feel that this will happen and I will be suspended. This is a very serious issue. When generally suspension happens in the rules, when suspension happens, it might be for 1 day, 2 days, etc., and it is revoked because the members, the house as such, require the expertise, knowledge, participation of the member. Can you please explain whether suspension due to breach of privilege and suspension due to violation of rules are similar? No. Priya is asking one question, whether suspension due to rules and suspension due to privileges are similar. No, they are different. The difference lies in the fact that for rules there are codification. This rule, this act, if you violate, this punishment. Problem with privilege is that privileges are not codified, exhaustively codified. If you violate rule, the maximum is within the session, remainder of the session. Here it is said that it can be extended. Right? There is a fundamental difference. These are not similar. If it is under rule, then it can be challenged within the house. Okay, there are the scope of judicial review that we will discuss later. The rules of the house have also some linkage with privilege. The committee of privilege has the rules, there is a privilege, the various rules of the houses also deal with it. But the point is that the way the other rules are elaborated, detailed, this way this is not done. Why? Because privileges are not codified. You do not know what is your privilege. Then how will you have proper rules for it? Privileges of parliamentarians, privileges of the house or committee are not detailed, codified, written down. If something is not written down, we cannot have rule for it, proper rule. The rule might be this: if you violate the privileges, then you can be punished, expelled, suspended, etc. Now, what is the privilege? That is not written. This is the difference. Anyway, so कहाँ थे हम लोग? Members, yes. Parliament as an institution. What is the function of a legislature? Lawmaking. Okay. Lawmaking. Then lawmaking, accountability function, deliberation. Multiple ways of looking at it. I'm just giving a framework here. Lawmaking. Parliament, legislature is supposed to make law. To make law, to make quality law, inputs are required, debate, discussion, everything is required, for which members have to be there. But if you are suspending an MP, then the parliament is losing what? The knowledge, expertise of that member. The member could have contributed to the lawmaking. Let's say this, in this case, Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary was suspended, a parliamentarian with a very long experience. The person could have positively contributed to the lawmaking. One of the problems with India is poor quality of lawmaking. Even the Chief Justice of India, the then Chief Justice of India said that poor quality of lawmaking will lead to greater level of adjudication, because there will be a lot of challenges in the court. Everywhere that's happening. IT rules happening, TAA happening, UAPA, all those things are happening. DPDP, we said, data law. Poor quality lawmaking will not only undermine governance, implementation of policy, implementation of law, but also will increase the interference of judiciary in the parliamentary function. Accountability. Executive need to be held accountable by the parliament, legislature. But if members are being suspended, they won't be able to ask questions. What kind of motions, resolution they will see, they will ask. One thing is that who are capable of holding the this executive accountable with the kind of knowledge and ability they have, they are removed. So they cannot ask questions. Executive will have a free pass if members are being suspended on flimsy grounds. Because in parliamentary democracy, the parliament operates in parliament democracy, the parliament operates in the backdrop of redeemable power from the judiciary, but also in the backdrop irredeemable power from the executive. It simply means that in parliamentary democracy, executive controls the parliament. Isn't it? Especially in the context of a majority government. Parliament is controlled by the executive. Parliament function is making law, right? Judiciary can interpret it. You can also strike down that law, but parliament can modify that law or change the basis of that law. So parliament can take the power back from the judiciary by amendment, but parliament cannot take back the power from the executive, because executive controls the parliament, especially in the context of India, right? So executive controls the parliament. So parliament can take back the lost ground from the judiciary, but not from the executive, especially when the executive is strong. The executive controls it. Executive, who forms the government? The majority party having the government, right? Number one. Who introduces the law? Bill, government. Who heads that Business Advisory Committee, BAC? It is headed by the Speaker in Lok Sabha. Speaker is the appointee of the government. This has leader of opposition, leader of House and others. Agenda of the Parliament is set by who? The government. Bills are introduced by the government. Motions are also introduced by the government. The Speaker has discretion. He controls everything. He can disallow questions. He can expunge remarks. He can be partisan. CAG conducts audit. And the reports are submitted to whom? No, President. President is controlled by who? Prime Minister, Executive. It is inbuilt within the Indian Constitution. Unlike in UK, even the Parliamentary Committee of Privilege investigated the Partygate scandal of Boris Johnson. Partygate scandal means during COVID-19 times, this Boris Johnson, the then Prime Minister, what he did? Within his office premises, he conducted party, liquor party, all those things every night. Why? Because from the morning to evening, lot of work happened. Right? This is known as Partygate scandal. So the Prime Minister was asking to everybody, do not go out, do not drink, do not party, because corona will spread. What he was doing? Flouting the rules. Prime Minister flouted the rules. Investigated by the Parliament. Found him guilty for breach of privilege. While this investigation was going on, Boris Johnson resigned from the Prime Ministership. Can you imagine such a situation in India? The incumbent Prime Minister of Britain has been fined by the police for not wearing seat belt. Even the Parliamentary Committee in UK, this privilege committee, have been investigating him because of alleged tax violation of his wife. Their parliament is sovereign. Here parliament is not sovereign, executive is sovereign, because especially in the context of majoritarian government, majority. In coalition, parliament can have its own integrity, but this will not happen. So executive can use this majority to suspend members. Accountability वैसे भी नहीं है. It is inbuilt within the Indian Constitution. To some extent, I am not exaggerating, but it's a fact. If you see the Constitution, the Union Executive, which is the Union, you have Union Executive, then you have Parliament. Why Union Executive? Parliament democracy, Parliament should be the first chapter. Anyway, so accountability is diluted. Deliberation, discussion, debate, motions, raising concerns of constituency. I am coming from a very poor tribal area. I am an MP, legislator. But I am suspended while I was raising the issue of starvation death in my tribal area and lack of government funding. I am suspended under breach of privilege. I cannot raise the voices, issues, concerns of the constituency. The constituency will go unrepresented. Suspension of members without proper reason and not following the proper procedures violate the notions of representative democracy. Whatever implication we are discussing here, this implication can also be applied to other suspension. Right? But the problem with this kind of suspension is that there is scope for arbitrariness because of the privilege is not defined, codified. And it is said that by constitutional experts that this kind of suspension, first suspend, then you refer the matter to the committee, and that too for duration which is extended beyond the session. This is first time in history, constitutional history of independent India. This is what they say. And this entire thing has to be seen in the larger context, from the past couple of years, how the parliament is functioning, how the government, the opposition feels that the government is not serious in running the parliament. There are multiple allegations and multiple number of times where questions have been asked on the issue of farm laws, as you know what happened in the parliament, and on the issue of Adani issue. There have been demands for questions and others, but which the opposition says that they were disallowed, and the recent issue of Manipur, no confidence motion. So these things need to be seen in the larger context of acrimony. I mean, what do we say? Deteriorating relationship between the government and the opposition. If you see the larger picture, then you might tend to believe that these suspensions are motivated, done for extraneous consideration, rather than for actual breach of privilege, if at all it happens. If it happens, then it should have been given to the committee and let the committee discuss, investigate and come back. So the suspension of members in this manner by using the privilege which is uncodified and also with an intention of vindictiveness, this is not a healthy practice as far as Indian democracy is concerned. It is very difficult to pinpoint, again I was discussing this in the beginning, to pinpoint, to take that bullseye, because in our mind parliamentary privilege is there, suspension is happening, but we are narrowing down the scope of this discussion into this privileges, breach of privilege by members and leading to suspension, and we have discussed some elements of it, how it is being done, what are the implications of it. The proper procedure should have been either you use the rule if it is available, otherwise yes, privilege, you can use the privilege motion, but it has to be followed with the procedure which is given, not this manner, because this creates further tension, conflicts, poor relationship between the government and the opposition, which will lead to further disruption, poor quality of lawmaking, debate, etc. in the house. And not only that, this have other issues, like I mentioned. The majority of the government will be used, can be used for or misused for punishing members. It will impact freedom of speech and expression, representativeness of the parliament. All these functions will be impacted. There are two cases which will help us, two cases in the sense, two verdict or judgment of Supreme Court. Two cases which will help us to develop an idea or to understand the issue better. The question is whether there is a misuse of privilege leading to suspension of members. If such a question is asked, we have to formulate our opinion for that. We cannot say yes there is and no there is not, right? We need to develop an informed opinion. I am giving you few cases through which we will understand this. This is one case, Ashish Shellar case 2022. In this case, what happened was 12 MLAs of the opposition, BJP then, were suspended by the House for 1 year. 1 year. The charge was contempt of House. Breach of privilege and contempt of House. These two terms, although used, 1 minute, Mom student, sir, can you explain please? Parliament can add more individual privilege to the constitution by amendment. Can you explain please? Parliament can add more individual privilege to the constitution by amendment. Why do you need Parliament to amend the constitution? They can say everything is my, they can say that this is my privilege. 105 says all those privileges enjoyed by the members prior to the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act will be available for the privilege, will be available as the privileges of members. Now, what were the privileges enjoyed by the members prior to 44th Amendment Act 1978? The Constitution said then, all the privileges which are enjoyed by the House of Commons will be available to the members, which means as of today, all the privileges which are being used, enjoyed by the House of Commons will be available to the Indian Parliament. Now, whether the Parliament of UK codified their privileges? No. The UK Parliament did not codify, although there was demand for that. But as of today, the privileges are not defined, codified. Then there is no need to amend the constitution. Right? Individual privilege to the constitution by amendment. If they want, they can. In 44th Amendment Act, one privilege was added, where in the 361A, freedom of press, there is no problem. They can amend it. They can amend individual, collective. They can do that. There is no problem. But the problem is that whether that violates the basic structure of the constitution, that's a different thing. But there is no need for that as of today, because privileges are undefined. So there is a huge scope of privilege. Anything can be under this. So there is no need for an amendment. One amendment could have been the linkage between parliamentary privileges and the freedom of speech and expression under Article 19(1)(a). I am digressing from this, but in order to answer that question, I would use this. Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution provides freedom of speech and expression to me, to citizens, but it is hedged, restricted by reasonable restrictions. But parliamentary privilege is not one of them. There are multiple grounds: sovereignty, integrity, defamation, right, public order, contempt of court, incitement to an offence, and others. But this parliamentary privilege is not one of them. But the Supreme Court has said in one Rajaram case and one MSM Sharma case earlier that these parliamentary privileges are special and which will trump, override the general provisions under Article 19(1)(a). So as of today, 19(1)(a) is subject to parliamentary privileges as of today. But again, there is another judgment, this, right, in Rajaram case, again in that case, Supreme Court has something else. I will discuss that later at the end. But keep this in mind. There is no need for an amendment as such. Parliament has a very huge scope of it. Right? Anyway. Anything? No. I'll answer that question later. Second one. Contempt of House and breach of privilege. The fundamental difference between contempt of House and breach of privilege is this. A contempt of House is an action of an individual, member or a non-member, which impedes or obstructs the functioning of the House. Impede or obstructs. Breach of privilege is those actions which undermine the authority, dignity of the House. Every breach of privilege may not be contempt of House, every contempt of House may not be breach of privilege. This is it. Number one. Number two. On a hierarchy, contempt of House has very strong implication. For contempt of House, the individual can be expelled, even expelled, suspended. I mean, I'm talking about the members. contempt of house, individuals can also be sent to prison. So the stringency of punishment or penal provision as far as contempt of house is very strong. One example of contempt of house is if the portions of the speech or proceedings of the house which are expunged by the speaker or the chairman for that matter. Expunged means nothing will go on record. You must show, right? This is something you when you watch the debate you will say nothing is going on record, which means it will not be part of parliament recording, parliamentary records, and you have a fundamental right to publish this 51A for press and others, and within 105 for the members. One incident was an individual, I think an one MP, she recorded the proceedings, which was allowed, and this recording went viral later. Recording means publication, which should not have been done. It was held that she did a contempt of house and she was suspended. Suspension happened. Indira Gandhi, 1978, she was also sentenced to jail for contempt of house. Because the allegation was she prevented some officials from carrying out their duty, and the officials were investigating the excesses of emergency. Privilege committee, motion was raised in the house, privilege committee investigated, they provided report, house adopted the motion, right, suspended and sent to prison. So severity, the level of this contempt of house is higher, but in general we are using it, contempt of house and privilege, interchangeably, but there is a difference. Now I am saying in this Ashish Shellar case, the issue of contempt of house, but fine, but because of the contempt of house, the 12 MLAs of Maharashtra Assembly suspended for 1 year. This suspended MLA approached where? Approached Supreme Court. Now, as you know, Article 122 of the Constitution says that the proceedings within the House is immune from judicial review. This is also part of privilege. Now, this proceeding happened within the House. Article 122 says there should not be any interference by the court. When this individual approached the court because of the 1 year suspension, they said the rule says only till the end of the session. Now we are suspended me for 1 year. This is illegal, unconstitutional. But the defense of the assembly is that under 194, 195, no, not 194, there is analogous article dealing with the state legislature, and the courts are barred from inquiring into this. So defense of the house was it is immune. This procedure happened within us, you cannot look into it. But Supreme Court decided that no, we will look into it. There is no blanket exemption or immunity given to the legislature or parliament for that matter. In general, we will not. But if there are such circumstances, then we have to inquire or see your actions and judge on that. Supreme Court used the doctrine in order to understand this, in order to find out whether it is correct or not. They used this doctrine of necessity. Doctrine means one set of principles. Doctrine of necessity. This doctrine of necessity is used to find out whether the suspension for 1 year is justified or not. The Supreme Court said, if you apply this doctrine of necessity, then this 1 year seems to be excessive. Why? Necessity. What is the meaning? Why do you do something? For a reason? Right? What is the reason of suspending these MLAs? The reason is that they are creating problems, disrupting the house cannot function, right? So it became necessary that they have to be suspended, removed from the house. So, it is the necessity of the House to suspend those members so that the House can function properly. The question is, for how long the House will function? For entire 1 year? Session is let for 30 days. One session is for 30 days, 35 days. So, for the 30 days, you can suspend. That's a different thing. But and that is necessary. If you feel that they are committing a breach of privilege or contempt or whatever that might be, fine. But what is the reason of suspending them for 1 year? The necessity is to have proper functioning of the House. And you suspended. But what if the House is not functioning? So, suspension cannot be for entire year. Not only that, the rules of the House say that suspension can only be for the session period, not more than that. But they say that we are using contempt of House. This is the ground they are using, not those rules. Then the court said, if you are keeping India suspended for 1 year, what is the implication of that? Those implications which you mentioned, representativeness, constituency will go unrepresented. And within this 1 year, the individual, the people will not be represented in that House. So, if you keep it for such a long time, then there will be no difference between suspension and expulsion. If you expel, then there will be vacancy, depending upon the time frame, there can be election, that's fine. Suspension cannot be for this many. Suspension can be for some specific time which is given there. It cannot be indefinite or for 1 year. Now come back to our issue in the House, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Doctrine of necessity, if you apply, necessity is to conduct the House proceeding, functioning. But what is the necessity of suspending them beyond the session? Cannot take shelter under breach of privilege. Beyond the session, up to what time? Nobody knows. So, if you see the Ashish Chellar case judgment, the spirit of the judgment and doctrine of necessity, you will reach to a conclusion that the suspension may not stand the judicial scrutiny. It is possible, even some MPs have said that we will go to the Supreme Court with this. Anyway, whether they will go or not, that we are not saying. We are simply saying that the manner of suspension and the extension beyond the session seems to be against the spirit of Ashish Chellar judgment, which has elucidated the importance of the role of MP and the doctrine of necessity. Number 2, Raja Rampal case 2005, Raja Rampal 205. This was this case when some MPs were caught in 2005, caught by investigative journalism, Cobra Post. MPs were taking cash for asking questions in the parliament. This is known as cash for question scam, cash for query scam, query, Query, query and question, same thing. Privilege committee expelled them after conducting inquiry, etc. This expulsion was challenged in the Supreme Court. Parliament took a stand because the MPs were from Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, both. So the Parliament as an institution took a stand that we have immunity under 122. Whatever happening within the House, it is immune from judicial review. You cannot enter into this. They refused to participate in the proceeding of the court. Even did not accept notice, etc. But Supreme Court heard this case. It provided it ordered or its judgment. In its judgment, the Supreme Court said, it is true that there is separation of power, and the Constitution provides for immunity and privileges as far as Parliament is concerned. But this does not mean that if there are gross or substantive illegality or unconstitutionality, then there will be scope for judicial scrutiny. So, gross illegality, substantial irregularity, unconstitutionality, etc. on this ground, it can be looked into. So, in this case, if it is alleged that there is a gross illegality, unconstitutionality of suspending members in this manner, that would not following the proper procedure. Proper procedure is what? Privilege committee, motion, all those things. So, there is illegality. So, judicial scrutiny is available or may be available. On a conjoined reading of Ashish Shellar and Raja Rampal case, the manner of suspension and its extension beyond the session indicate that the decisions of the House violate the fundamental philosophy or spirit of the Supreme Court judgment in these two cases. Apart from that, the implication of the suspension under this privilege are enormous. And when you see the relation between the government and opposition and the lack of proper working of Parliament, the poor quality of debate, the lesser number of bills being sent to the standing committee, higher government functionaries not willing to attend the Parliament and answer questions. If you see the suspension in this larger context of opposition government relation, you might tend to believe that these are motivated on extraneous considerations. But again, at the same time, the opposition members, the MPs, should be circumspect. They should be, they should conduct themselves in a manner that is befitting of parliamentarians. They should not disrupt unnecessarily. I am using unnecessarily. Disruption is necessary. It cannot be unnecessary. Disruption is an expression of democracy. If executive controls the Parliament, no debate is happening, then the only way is to disrupt it. Then it will be reported in the media if you have a free media. Then question will be asked, why is it happening? But today question is being asked on the opposition that you are disrupting, not asking why is it being done. Anyway, how this entire issue can be addressed, that's what we are going to see in the last segment of this discussion. The most important thing is, in the context of these privileges and the suspension of members, codification. It might not happen, it will not happen. I won't say will not happen, it might not happen, but we are saying codification to the extent possible. This can be done. codification to the extent possible, you codify it. It will help not only the members but also others. Otherwise, it will create a chilling effect. If I say something A, I will be caught and punished. And the scope of judicial review is very less as far as this is concerned. Generally, the judiciary will not come to your help. You can send to prison and reprimanded, etc., can be done. So, codification to the extent possible of the privileges, so that the scope for misuse is reduced. Even if it is not possible to codify, we can follow the practices of UK Parliament. They have a committee of privileges. They also have a committee of conduct, a committee on code of conduct, a committee on standards of conduct. So let's say in UK, earlier this is the committee of privileges, P. Whatever area, everything, all those issues, again, everything came under the remit or purview of this committee. So there have been demands that this lack of this vagueness, ambiguity, lack of clarity in this privilege is impeding in the functioning of independent MPs as well as the people outside the house. So Parliament did not codify it. What it did? It removed something from here. It reduced the scope of parliamentary privileges by it brought a code of conduct for MPs in Britain, and a committee on standard of conduct has been established. So all those conduct are codified, but some area is left. So reduce the scope of privilege. This can be done. If you want to codify, then you can follow the Australian model. Australian Parliamentary Privilege Act 1987, codified. Although there are some flexibility, but codified. Codification can be done. Most important thing, another important thing is the composition of the privilege committee. Privilege committee, as of today, Lok Sabha has 15, Rajya Sabha has 10. In Lok Sabha, 10 members are from who? The government party, 10 from BJP. We are not saying just because one party has large number, because of the strength of that party, that the privilege committee will take a biased decision. We are not saying that. But there is a perception. So in order to address this perception of biasness or conflict of interest for that matter, we need to broad base the composition of the committee. Reduce the influence control of one party of privilege committee. This can be done. Suspension of members, whether under privilege or under rules, should be a last resort. It cannot be used to discipline members. Even if you suspend, what happens is that generally the suspension is revoked immediately, 1 day, 2 days. Because Parliament is an arena, it's a marketplace of ideas, where ideas are contested, competed. Bargaining happens, negotiation happens, discussion happens. So there has to be freedom. So we cannot curtail that in freedom of speech and expression. And there are multiple ways of proving your point. Standing up, going to the well, all those things are accepted ways of parliamentary system of functioning. So this cannot be penalized. So there should be better understanding. For that, the chair needs to be impartial. Chair, presiding officers. Presiding officers should be impartial. For that, the larger dynamics between the opposition and the government also need to be improved. We need to learn the healthy practices from other parliament democracies, including UK, Canada, Australia. We are following Westminster system of parliamentary system. We can learn from them how they are addressing it. Privilege should not become a weapon. Right, privileges should not become a weapon for undermining parliamentary democracy and accountability of the executive. Privileges are given for protection of democracy, not to breach or not to dilute democracy. Separation of power demands, or integrity, independence of parliament demands that keeping away judiciary. If the parliament carries out such actions, suspensions, without following proper rules and procedures, and there are tendency of arbitrariness, it provides opportunity for the judiciary to enter. It will undermine the authority, dignity of the house instead of protecting it. You are saying you are using parliamentary privilege, suspending member to protect the dignity, authority of the house. But if you do this in this manner, it might be possible that the judiciary might enter, which will undermine your dignity, authority. Conflict will happen. Similarly, the MPs, again, I would say, especially from opposition, they should follow the code of conduct. As you know, there is a code of conduct of MPs in Rajya Sabha, not in Lok Sabha. There are ethics committee in both the houses, but no code of ethics for them. We can create a code of conduct for the Lok Sabha MPs, and we can create an ethics commissioner like second IRC has recommended. All those conduct related issues need to be separated from privileges, like did in UK. Not only that, when there is a code of conduct, it is written down. So members will come to know these are the conduct which are expected of us. Like let's say there is a code of conduct for civil servants. Only conduct rules, only service conduct rules, central civil service conduct rules, etc., etc. So civil servants know what they are expected to do and not expected to do. In Rajya Sabha it is. In Rajya Sabha we can revise them, refine them. In Lok Sabha it should be implemented, it should be drafted. So that members will come to know what is expected of them, what conduct should not be done. Instead of including the conduct in the ambit of privilege, let us separate it. And opposition members should also be more cooperative. They should follow rules, isn't it? Instead of taking an antagonistic approach. Right, that's what we are supposed to do. They should also do. We cannot say that only government is creating problem. Right. Because ultimately, if you keep repeating the same problem, same issue, and which is disallowed, and you are standing in front of the chair of the that presiding officer, throwing lot of things into the, let's say, the chairman and others, these are not expected as such. So there is a limit of parliamentary activism within the, and as you know, privileges are not absolute. Even parliamentary privileges are not absolute, it is subject to constitution and rule. So rules made by the parliament can also restrict them. So the parliamentarians should not believe that their freedom of speech and expression, it is absolute, they can do anything. No, that is not within the spirit of the constitution. They should watch out for their conduct. They should use parliamentary means to convey their point. If their voice is not heard in the parliament, they should go to their constituency and use political action instead of trying to prevent the parliament from function. Right? Anything else you want to ask? Lucky Priya, Mark, students, sir, can you explain constitution? So good evening. What is the procedure of moving privilege motion? What is the procedure of moving privilege motion? The privilege motion, the chair can refer the matter to the committee, quo motu, number one. Number two, a member can stand up, right, and request the chair. And if there is consensus within the house, then it can be moved, it can be given to the privilege committee. Privilege motion can be moved by a member as well as by the chair. But it is only one thing. The investigative report or the report of the committee needs to be accepted by the house. House can reject it, amend it, even do not agree with the punishment proposed. Committee cannot take a decision. It is the house that will take. But there is an area where the chair might be able to take independent decision. Chair can suo motu, inquire, etc. Because there are multiple discretionary power available to the chairman and the presiding of the speaker. It is required as far as parliament is concerned. But anyway, next. What is the rule punishment for breach of privilege of outsider members of parliament? Same. What is the rule of punishment for breach of privilege? A member can be suspended or expelled. Non-member can be warned, reprimanded, admonished, almost the same thing, or even sent to prison. If it is contempt of house, fine, it can, the member can also be sent to prison. But anyway, it's not that much necessary. But again, the rules are different. I mean, the scope of punishment is different. But one thing is same. What is privilege? They have more privilege as far as members are concerned. That is why this breach of privilege motion, most of the time you will see it is against non-members. Like in 2017, I think 16 or 17, Karnataka, 2 journalists I think were called by the speaker. The journalist wrote something against the speaker, right? Speaker complained to the privilege committee. He headed the privilege committee. He himself wrote the judgment and they were sent to prison. They approached the Supreme Court stayed it. It happened with Tamil Nadu also earlier, decades back, 2005 or 6. Individuals wrote something against the chief minister. Privilege motion was instituted. In Kerala, privilege motion was instituted against the State Information Commissioner. He went to the High Court. High Court said, I am not going to look into it. And he was called. It is necessary. I am not saying this is not necessary. Yes, Parliament has instituted, it is required. A privilege is a mechanism for enabling the legislators to function properly. Parliamentary privileges are essentially privileges of the citizen, right? Because citizens' issues, concerns are addressed by them. Citizen sovereignty are reflected in the parliamentary privileges. Through the privileges, accountability of the government can be ensured. Accountability of the administration can be ensured. Oversight and supervision of the legislators over the administration can be ensured. I am an MP, there is a district collector. He does not listen to me. He is behaving derogatorily. He is not inviting to the meetings. He is not sharing the information. So he is undermining my privilege. He can be called. It should be. But the purpose is public interest, not this political vendetta. Right? Anything else you want to ask? It's a very difficult topic. Difficult in the sense that, in order to provide you the kind of understanding that the content, it was difficult. When I developed this topic, I thought that it will be easy. But later I came to know that, yes, this is going to take a lot of effort. So that's the reason, when you go back home, this video is also available on YouTube. If you find difficulties, watch it. Right? Otherwise, you can ask me. If you have made the notes, it will help, because there are multiple things in the PDF which are in this class which are not there in the PDF. Right? But again, to conclude this discussion, parliamentary privileges should be used for protecting and promoting the effective functioning of the parliament and espousing the interest of citizen rather than undermining the democratic system and using the privileges for political vendetta. Right? Thank you so much. So Prasad, how are you? Very good. You have any question related to farmers? Your question most of the time related to farmer. Okay then, study well. Bye.